Hey everyone, welcome back to the FPBcast. Mike Szvetitz, Gerry, Ahern, FrontPageBets, FrontPageBets.com. We just finished week 10 of the NFL season, week 11 of the college football season. And the more things change, it seems the more things stay the same, at least when it comes to college. We know who our top four teams are. We kind of have an idea set with 2 weeks to go in the regular season. The NFL, who knows? Who knows what's happening in the NFL anymore? Buffalo loses to the Vikings yesterday. We've got some teams still in flux. We got teams that we thought weren't going to be very good turning out to be good. The Packers resurrect their season a little bit. Teams that we thought would win by double digits fall. It's been a crazy NFL season. We'll get to that, Gerry, but let's start off with the college football. We had a big college football weekend. We had 3 top 25 teams playing each other that had some implications, talking about, at Alabama and Ole Miss. We had LSU and Arkansas. LSU was able to clinch the West with the Ole Miss loss and their win over Arkansas. And we also had, another top 10 team going down. Oregon falls to Washington. But the top 4 teams, it seemed like, took care of business, especially TCU, Texas. We'll start there. TCU goes to Austin, was a road dog, and ends up winning by a touchdown. And really kind of Sonny Dykes and the Horned Frogs, it's theirs to lose now. As far as getting in the college football playoff, ranked 4th in the country. The college football playoff rankings come out Tuesday night, but it looks like TCU kind of solidified their top 4 spot, Jeremy.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Max Duggan, the quarterback, is an amazing player and probably should be mentioned in the Heisman race, in my opinion. Big win at Texas, a lot of stakes there. I mean, TCU's got to run the table, I think, to hold on to that number 4 spot. I think most people agree with that, but big win in Austin. And as you mentioned, 3 of the top 4, the other 3 win handily. Georgia trouncing Mississippi State, Ohio State beating a pretty mediocre Indiana team, Michigan just crushing a crummy Nebraska team. So, I don't know how much we actually learned about those teams this weekend, other than I feel like Georgia is head and shoulders the number 1 team in the nation. Michigan and Ohio State will obviously kind of cancel each other out in the regular season finale there, but TCU is the team that could potentially fall out, I think, if they stumble at all.
Yeah, they're, an undefeated Big 12 team, but still, when you compare them to, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, I think you start to, there's a big drop off. And I think the voters in the committee in the college football playoff know that, obviously. We learned a lot about Alabama, I thought, though, against Ole Miss. Ole Miss still had a kind of a track to get to challenge for the SEC West. LSU, because of their win against Arkansas and Ole Miss's loss to Alabama, they clinched the West title, so they'll most likely face Georgia in the SEC championship game in Atlanta in December. But Alabama, after 2 losses, bounces back and they win. But for the first time in a very long time, Alabama is not in the conversation. Maybe, I don't think a 2-loss team could get in unless it's LSU. We'll talk about the college football playoff and what we think, but I think Alabama showed something at Ole Miss on Saturday. And then, Oregon, I think, had another inside track to get in from the Pac-12, and they fall to Washington. And the Bo Nix experience, he's good for 17 games. Then he has a game like he had on Saturday. But now you've got a team like USC that could probably, if things align, might be able to sneak in if TCU or if somebody else falls. But Gerry, what else surprised you about this weekend, or kind of setting up into going into this weekend coming up? Not a lot of great games on the schedule, but some games that do mean something if a team falls that's not supposed to.
I think the biggest thing that surprised me was how narrowly LSU was able to win at Arkansas, especially with Arkansas's quarterback starter out. 3-point spot, 3-point win, massively under. That really surprised me. The LSU spread bet was one of my best bets. That was the only best bet I pushed on. Wound up going 2-1-1, which is kind of disappointing, but that was the big surprise to me. And I was a little surprised Alabama didn't beat Ole Miss more handily. I really thought they would. They had to come from behind, showed a lot of resilience. Ole Miss is a pretty good football team. Maybe I didn't give them enough credit. But, that was a big win, although not a huge surprise. Going into this week, as you mentioned, kind of a soft slate. The game that potentially could have been a big one was Georgia at Kentucky. It's a 22.5-point spot now after UK took the pipe to Vandy. giving Vandy its first SEC win since God knows when,
Forever. Like 60-something games or 20-something.
since the plague or whatever. But, I like Georgia to cover that 22.5.
Yeah.
And then, the other big one is that's lost a little bit of luster, but it's still the big game of the weekend, I think, is USC at UCLA. The Trojans given 2.5. UCLA is coming off a huge choke stumble, losing to Arizona, kind of a crappy Arizona team.
Yeah.
So that one's lost a little luster, but in a weak slate, those are the two games I have my eye on.
And those are the ones that are going to matter, at least for USC, if they want to keep pace and have a chance at the college football playoff. And obviously Georgia can't have a stumble, even though they're the best team in the country. Now, when we get in, we have 2 weeks left in the regular season. Then we have the conference championship games, but the college football playoffs, the top 4 teams right now, solidified at Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU. Now, you said Ohio State and Michigan could cancel each other out when they play in the final weekend of the season. Georgia,
unless a one-loss Big Ten team gets in and they get 2 in, which I think is very unlikely.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about, kind of how the college football playoff could shape out, because you're going to have 2 and 3 are going to play each other at the end of the season in Ohio State and Michigan. So that's going to change something up. Georgia wins out, TCU wins out, they're both in. What happens if Ohio State and Michigan, whoever wins in, whoever loses still could be on the outside looking in, still could get in with a 1 loss, depending on if Tennessee, because I think Tennessee is right there at 5. Tennessee's waiting to see who falls so they can get in. But if you have a Ohio State team that beats Michigan, but then let's say Ohio State loses in the Big Ten championship, does Michigan leapfrog and get in? Does Ohio State get in and you have 2 Big Ten teams? There's a lot of scenarios here. Tennessee is that first one up if everything else stays the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would take something wacky to happen, like a Michigan or Ohio State to lose in the Big Ten championship game to make that happen. Given the West Division of that conference, I think that's rather unlikely.
Right.
But, as you mentioned, it's been an unlikely season in a lot of counts. So, Tennessee is the outside looking in team, obviously, and being an SEC team and recording some of the margins of victory that they have. They're probably the most likely to potentially slip in through the back door. But I don't think so, really. I think unless Ohio State, Michigan is like a 3 points or less game, if either team, I think, wins handily in that game, the other one gets eliminated. And if you're not the SEC, I don't think there's any conference that gets 2 in.
So who would be in then? If the loser of the Ohio State Michigan game is eliminated, who gets in? Does Tennessee take that spot?
I think Tennessee's the most likely option there. Yeah, I mean, assuming obviously they take care of business the rest of the way as well.
But they got Vandy in South Carolina. I'm not really thinking that that's going to be a struggle for the Vols.
South Carolina is my Achilles heel, man. Every time I pick them, they lose, and every time I pick against them, they win. So I'm not going to say anything about the game.
Right? Yeah, just stay away from that. But I think you're right. If a conference gets 2 in, it's most likely going to be the SEC rather than the Big Ten.
Just purely because of strength of schedule and strength of conference, and the Big Ten's probably the second best conference, but when you look at strength of schedule particularly for that Michigan team and Ohio State for that matter, their non-conference games are pretty slim and pretty weak.
Now, if TCU loses, right, they're done. There's no way they get with 1 loss get in. There's no way a Big 12 team with 1 loss gets in over a 1-loss SEC team.
I wouldn't think so, no.
So TCU has to win out to get in. If they lose, Tennessee's in, or Michigan or Ohio, whoever it is, then you might have 2 SEC and 2 Big Ten teams. TCU loses, Tennessee takes that spot. Loser of Michigan, Ohio State still gets in because TCU would fall out. So there's a potential you could have 2 ACC or 2 SEC and 2 Big Ten teams if TCU loses.
I think it would be absolute mass hysteria if that happens. I can't imagine the beefing that will go on in conferences like the Pac-12 and the ACC if that happens.
Dogs and cats.
And if Clemson is a 1-loss team at that point and wins the ACC, then I think they're back in the equation somehow.
Right, correct. What about USC? 1-loss USC team wins the Pac-12. They get it. So there's a lot going on, but TCU kind of is they're the ones kind of holding their breath because they got to win out because they probably know if they lose, they're done.
Yeah, no, they do. I'm sure they do, and they knew how tough it was to get into the top 4. They were beefing the week before about Alabama. So, yeah, I think that's the way it goes. I mean, USC, I think, is going to have to run up a big number against UCLA and continue to keep charging to make any more noise than they have, just because of, again, Utah slipped back a little bit, UCLA slipped back a little bit, Oregon slipped back a little bit. That conference is really sort of deteriorating as we speak.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. No undefeated teams in the Pac-12, and the teams we thought were good, are not being able to hold up there.
Oregon had the best shot until they stumbled this week.
Correct. Because of their loss to Georgia, looked really good the better Georgia got, but still, we saw who they were again.
Well, it didn't look good. I mean, given the absolute.
Well, it looks good in the
it looks less horrific, I would say.
Didn't look good in real life, but looks good on the strength schedule. But now I think Oregon's done with 2 losses just as well. Let's transition into the NFL.
Yeah,
out of a sleepy week that we thought was going to be, I took a lot of home teams, a lot of chalk, and some of them won. But the big game, obviously, yesterday was the Bills, Vikings. The way that game finished, the Vikings went in there at 8-1. What a crazy, incredible 1:00 game, and just for my money, probably one of the best regular season football games I've seen in a while. And I don't know if that's saying much because of. Some plays were made, huge plays by Jefferson there, huge catches, but then some controversy with some calls. Did Buffalo give that one away? Did Josh Allen give it away, or did the Vikings take it?
I think Captain Kirk is now Captain Comeback. I mean, Kirk Cousins, unbelievable performance, taking the Vikings to 8-1, 6 consecutive comeback wins for a guy, another guy who I've sort of torn up a little bit on here, but he's done nothing but prove me wrong. You can say the Bills gave it to him a little bit. You can beef about calls. I think calls went both ways in that game. Justin Jefferson's talk about a receiving clinic. Some of those catches are like literally will go into the footage will go into the Hall of Fame. Just an amazing comeback by the Vikings, and to go to 8-1. They're in the driver's seat now, and they really are.
They are. And the Eagles play Monday Night Football against the Commanders. We're here earlier in the week on the FPB podcast, but we've got the Eagles still undefeated right now, but the Vikings, you're looking at and 7 of their wins, the last 6 in a row have come by 1 score less. So they're playing close games, they're winning close games, they're coming from behind, and Josh Allen, 2nd in the league in touchdown passes with 20, 1st in interceptions with 10. Wasn't sure if he was going to play. Comes in, still a little elbow.
Sounds a little like Matthew Stafford last year, doesn't it?
Great gunslinger. Just when you got that much confidence and you got that much arm ability and you're playing at a high level, I mean, I'm sure those.
Well, he also had a little bit of a bum elbow too, so you don't know how much of a factor that was. Look, Josh Allen and the Bills are going to be fine. I think they lost to a pretty good football team, like.
No question.
As you mentioned, with some, extenuating circumstances, but I'm not worried about the Buffalo Bills or Josh Allen. They're both just fine the way they are. Yeah. The other big one yesterday to me was the Packers rallying past the Cowboys in Lambeau. 3 touchdown passes from the much maligned Aaron Rodgers to the much maligned Christian Watson. Another huge game, getting the Pack almost back to 500. They can get there with a win on the Thursday night game this week. Watch out for them. Watch out for them if they finally have found a way to move the ball through the air to complement their running game. They could sneak in as a wild card. Obviously, the Vikings are in control in the North and have the division pretty much won.
And that's the one thing about the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, you can say what you want about him. The guy knows how to win, but he also can make some throws, and you just give him a little bit of talent around him that's not hurt or banged up. He'll find a way to win. And with the running game, some of the Packers haven't had in a while, with Aaron Jones and Dillon, that 2-headed monster. I think, could they turn around their season? Of course they can. They're playing in the division with the Vikings, and you've got still the Eagles and the Cowboys. Speaking of which, Cowboys and the Vikings play this weekend. So you've got some tough NFC teams, especially in the East and the North. You've also got, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Chiefs. In the AFC, Patrick Mahomes leads the league in yards, touchdown passes. is now the odds-on favorite after this weekend to win the MVP at plus 150. And kind of separated himself from Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and Tua and those guys. So Mahomes looking like the Mahomes of old, but coming into next week, I think that if the Vikings want us to keep going, if the Cowboys lose 2 in a row, what does that mean? So we've got some games coming up.
Explain to me how the Cowboys are a 2-point favorite at Minnesota.
Right. Yeah. It's just, well, we'll see what the public does with that information. Because right now I'm hammering that too for the Vikings, definitely at home.
And then you get the Eagles going for 9-0 at the Colts. How about Jeff Saturday picking up the win in his first game as an NFL head coach against the lowly Raiders?
Yeah,
I mean, that one coming. Props to you. I think the Eagles, given 9.5 at Indianapolis, walk next week. Right. And the biggest game to me might very well be that Packers-Titans game on Thursday. The Pack given 2.5 at Tennessee. They got to win that game. They're playing with desperation. Do they continue to, build on the momentum that they established this weekend in Lambeau?
No, absolutely. I think that, that Thursday night game is really big for a lot of reasons, because Tennessee as well, playing decent, got a good defense. Obviously their running game, they want to try to compete in that AFC. That's pretty tough at the top. But you talk about Achilles heel. I cannot bet the Raiders anymore. I cannot pick the Raiders anymore. I keep picking them and they keep losing. They keep finding new ways to lose.
This might be the week, though.
What's that?
This might be the week.
I can't do it. I keep saying I'm not, and I do. It's like, you know what I mean?
Their quarterback had a little emotional meltdown post game too. That's not a great sign either.
Not a great sign what's going on in Vegas. But I think we're going to see a lot in the second half of this season. We still got a lot going on, still a lot of games left to play. But what are the better teams? If you continue to win close like this early, it sets you up better. And I think you said the Vikings are in the driver's seat. I think the Eagles have some flaws, even though they're undefeated going into the Monday night game against the Commanders. This week, again, we're taping this a little bit earlier in the week, but the Eagles are still I think they're still trying to figure some things out, but I feel like the Vikings have figured it out. I feel like they know who they are. They're playing tough, and they're winning the close games. Kirk Cousins really is kind of separated himself. Is he going to be in the mix for an MVP? And then you talk about Justin Jefferson. Could he be the offensive player of the year this season that he's having? There's still a lot to be determined in the second half of
he was definitely the offensive player of the week. That's for sure. My God, those catches were unbelievable.
No question about it. And so we will be keeping an eye on all of it here at Front Page Bets. Stay with us all week. We'll have that coming into 2 weeks of college football season left. Second half just started for the NFL, so plenty of football. And then we got college football playoffs. World Cup coming up Sunday as well. We'll have it all here at frontpagebets.com. For Gerry, I'm Mike. Thanks for watching.